Yeah, I thank you myself.
Do you want to introduce the exercise and activity?
Okay, I'd like to get everybody's attention before we officially start.
Tony.
I want to thank all of you for joining us. This is our 7-story circle. We've done 6 prior to that. We normally try to do them outside. We were going to do them outside today, but the rain, there was scattered rain, it rained real hard to stop. It's rained a little, the sun comes out. So I didn't want anybody to be discouraged and getting wet, getting sick, and confusing the cold with COVID-19. So we decided to do it indoors. Today, we're going to concentrate on racism within. Whether that's within America, within our community, within ourselves. And we chose the subject based on what's happening in throughout the nation, in our communities. Okay? So, I want to let you know, we've been doing this for like a year and a half. We train. Right, we have 2 of the young people that we train, Calvin and Vanessa. Some of the other young people that we work with don't feel safe coming out, and we understand that. We want people to feel safe. So I certainly appreciate that you're coming out here, and we want to hear your stories. We see this as something positive. We see this as open communication. We've been concentrating basically on the Columbia Heights community, of how it's been changing and evolving. This is what the project's all about, is voices of a changing community. We did one circle on what is culture, another one, what is home to me? Where do you see the community in 10 years? Do I feel safe? That was the last one we did, and it had to do with the corona and what we're all experiencing. So today, we want to just explore all that's happening. I've been in this city for over 40 years. I've been an activist, and I've worked real closely in the rise of 91. I was out there trying to calm things down. We created a community coalition afterwards, and we brought people together. We worked closely with the police department. Since the 70s, I've been here, and I've been working closely with the police department in different times. And I think that DC has been real different than other jurisdictions. We have access to it. I gave a phone call to the commander, and he was gracious enough to join us, so I appreciate that. DC, like I said, the police department has, when we wanted more Hispanic police officers, they got more Hispanic police officers. When we saw bad apples, we brought that up to their attention. They got rid of some of the bad apples that we brought up to their attention. They created a unit that includes gay and lesbian community, a whole division. So they've been on top of a lot. They've been on top of community policing. My experience, and a lot of my colleagues and friends' experiences, have been a little different than some of my friends out of state in different parts of the country. But what we want to explore today is how has racism played a role in our lives, how are the events that are currently happening in our nation's capital and throughout the U.S. has an effect on us and our community and the psyche of America in general, okay? So John Johnson.
Tony, sorry, can you introduce Franklin and the
everybody can introduce himself.
Okay, a little background.
We're going to go around, everybody's going to introduce one another. But John Johnson is our lead storyteller. He trained young people, he's the one that conducts all this. I'm the executive project director, basically just making sure we do all the circles. Rebecca's who got up there, the founder got up there, and the one who located the Craig Street grant to do this amazing project. Once we finish all the story circles, we will collect the stories that we've collected and create a script, combine the stories. There are certain themes that continuously come up. And so we have somebody who's working on that. We don't know how it's going to turn out because we don't know what the stories are as we go along. This is our 7th one. We're planning to do 10. We got 3 more. Okay? So if I can leave it to John and then have everybody introduce themselves.
Cool, yeah. So real quick, we're gonna just do a brief intro. Can you guys hear me? Okay, we're gonna do a brief introduction, and then Vanessa's gonna lead us in a warm-up, a creative warm-up, and then we're gonna have a discussion about the community, okay? So I'm John Johnson, I'm a native Washingtonian, I'm a poet, a playwright, and a storyteller. We can go this way.
Good afternoon, my name is Marcelina. Muy buenas tardes, mi nombre es Marcelina. And today I'm going to start the story circle. Hoy yo voy a empezar el círculo de historia. Y first we're going to go around, say our names. Primero vamos a ir alrededor y vamos a decir nuestros nombres. My name is Vanessa Lopez. Mi nombre es Vanessa Lopez.
Hello, my name is Frances Lutz. I'm an acupuncturist here in Washington, D.C. Right.
I'm Steve Coleman with Washington Parks and People.
Hi, my name is Calvin Armstrong. Hola, mi nombre es Calvin Armstrong. I just wanted to repeat what she said.
Hey everybody, I'm Randy Griffin, native Washingtonian. I'm the commander of the 4th District.
Franklin Garcia, U.S. Shadow Representative. I've been in Washington, D.C. since 1981.
Hello, Quisha Bradley. I'm from Atlanta, but I've been in D.C. for a little over 18 years now. I'm global public health consultant and community organizer.
Cool, so Vanessa's gonna lead us with a storytelling workshop. Make sure you project so we can hear everyone because these masks definitely have a limitation. So speak, loudly as possible. What Vanessa?
Okay, so I'm gonna start with the small story, and when I finish saying part of the story, someone is gonna continue, and then you're gonna continue until we finish the story.
I just want to chime in. So this is a circle story, and we're all adding into a story. It can be made up, and using your creativity. It doesn't require you to you just add on to whatever the person is once they pass the story along. It will end once the story goes all the way around. Cool? All right, just make sure you speak up when necessary. We want to hear you, okay?
Okay.
If you want a microphone, that might be better.
Sure. There was a day 2 girls went to a park where they wanted to play soccer, but they couldn't because they were kicking them out. So they decided to go to another park, but they weren't allowed to be in any of the parks. And then
That last part, they went to another park, is that what you said? Okay. So they went to another park and a group of them started up a game of soccer, and then another group of people came along and asked them a question.
And this group of people were uniformed members of the National Guard who told them that they weren't allowed to play, that it was dangerous for them to be there, and they needed to stop and leave immediately.
But then the girls said that wasn't right, and they really wanted to play because all the other parks they went to, everybody else kicked them out. But then
And then the girls asked the National Guard if they had ever played soccer, to which they said, no, we've never played soccer before. How does the game work? So they proceeded to show the National Guard how to play soccer, and the National Guardsmen actually had fun playing soccer with the girls. But then
they didn't really know the community, so they were confused. They had no idea where they needed to reach out to get some guidance. And that's when another person showed up as a leader of the community and said, I can help you and give you guidance.
Did y'all practice? How did y'all do this so quickly? He said, I can give you some guidance. Let's first start with political education. So learning lessons from the past to determine how we analyze, perceive today's events and move forward from them. Then let's start by organizing ourselves. The girls responded, what do you mean by organizing ourselves?
And not only did they say, what do you mean by organizing ourselves, but like, I still am a little scared that these National Guardsmen are playing soccer with these guns strapped to them. And it makes me feel uncomfortable. So we definitely have to start all over because all of these institutions don't serve us anymore. The end. Okay, so we got a little bit, you know, everybody said a little bit of something, you know, there's something on our spirits, on our hearts. There's a lot going on. We all are talking to one another with masks on, uncomfortable and getting acne and all that kind of stuff. And we're here. We are adjusting. We're readjusting to it. So the first question is, I'm gonna read a poem, and this poem is, I don't know if you guys are familiar with, in Philadelphia, like about 2 years ago, there were these two black men who were in Starbucks waiting on a friend. And I guess because they didn't buy any coffee, the store manager called the cops on them and they got arrested. And it made a whole bunch of news. Starbucks apologized, the lady got fired and all that kind of stuff. But so this is a poem that I wrote called Coffee Shop. And I think this may even get a little deeper in what we're talking about. So excuse me, may I have a macchiato? Minus the racism and gentrification, and hold the dairy because I'm lactose intolerant. I'm no longer tolerant. I want my teachers strapped with the truth and tank tops because then they can bear arms. America still drops bombs, war. So much beef and it can't be swallowed by vegetarians, and so many bitches they can't be vaccinated by veterinarians. You probably are judging me for my content and not my character. You see, this poem has dreams too. It has dreams that are a little different than MLK. This poem had a dream that it was in the car and Jesus was in the back. And we nicknamed Jesus Black because Jesus Black. And riding shotgun was Harriet and Marcus Garvey was driving the Cadillac Chariot. You see, this poem had a dream that Tamir Rice never met Tupac. But maybe there's too much caffeine in my macchiato, or maybe it's just too melanated. So there you go. And so that's just a poem that just touches on the way people feel right now. Like there is a conversation that has to happen right now with how we feel safe and how we export our safety to these institutions, if that makes sense. I'm not trying to get all too technical, but like, how are the police treating your community? So that's the question I want to ask. We have someone who represents them. We have folks who represents the voices of people who are trying to get this issue addressed. And I'm hoping that we can have a fruitful conversation about it. So anyone can raise their hand. I'll hand you the microphone. Any question, any statement from anybody thus far?
So I guess this question is for like basically anybody. But so the riots that are going on, I just wanted to say it. So do y'all think that when people rioting, do y'all think it's the right thing? Anybody?
What?
Like when people are rioting, like all the rioting.
What do you think, Calvin? Do you think people rioting is the right thing?
Yes and no, because like I kind of like the like peaceful rioting, but like the breaking and messing up the stuff, because like it's kind of destroying our land and stuff, and I feel as though it just doesn't really create a good image for some people. But like I kind of like how we're trying to get our message across, like how some people feel as though our voices aren't being heard, so they need to really do stuff. But yeah, so I think it's a yes and no.
Thank you, young man. It's a good question. Something you just said made me think of the Martin Luther King Jr. quote, and I'm probably going to misquote it, but it's something along the lines of rebellions or riots, urban rebellions, however you want to look at them, is the language for people whose voices feel unheard, right? So per your last point, is thinking about why do people feel unheard, and why is there oftentimes in the capitalist society we live in more attention, time, care, effort, love spent on property versus people. Like literally putting money, profit, over people, planet, and peace. So that's something that also needs to be analyzed right now, not looking at the case by case by case by case, because there's countless, right? If you add it up, and not just of African and brown and poor and gender nonconforming people in this country, but globally. So we also need to look at the global context of this, which is something I actually liked about your opening poem when you were talking about the militarization, you know? Like it's more than just police in a neighborhood, it's military, it's international impact. But I'll stop.
So I am grateful for people being angry, and I am angry with myself for not being angrier longer, for keeping too much of this bottled up for too long. I'm a white guy born of privilege, and the things I've experienced at the hands of police and fascism in neighborhoods I love, where I've spent my whole adult life, are deeply painful to me. To have the jump out squad go flying up over a curb, pointing semi-automatic police revolvers at my body because I was white in a black neighborhood, and asking a question of an ice cream driver and taking a phone number from him so we could have him come down to the movie. But because it was a white piece of paper, it had to be crack, because why else would a white guy be in a black neighborhood but to be buying or selling crack? I want to lift up everybody who's angry. We've been standing out on these vigils and protests, and people have been applauding us for standing there. Why are they applauding us? African Americans applauding me for doing nothing? I mean, I've tried, but I've failed. I've been working on this for 30 years. A boy was killed next to my home on Dr. King's birthday in 1990. He died in the arms of my housemate at noon, at the same time that Dr. King had been born many years earlier. And the police came and told us to go inside. We were the murder capital of the country then. We were the murder center of the murder capital, right here in this neighborhood. And the police told us to go inside because they said that this was something that had to be handled by the professionals. Well, the professionals have failed. It's not about them, it's about us. We've created these structures where we have fed this notion that more militarization, more guns, more uniforms, more alienation of people and race and all the differences among us will somehow make things better, and it does not. That more people in jail will be better. It is not better. We are making things worse. We are robbing. Right now, the mayor's budget is saying, cut the Roving Leaders program, the mentorship of our kids, and put more money into more militarization of police. They took the urban park rangers who were out patrolling our parks, lifting up kids as mentors, unarmed mentors, and they turned them into security guards and said, no, the police can handle that. Well, folks, the police don't. And again, it's not about the police. This is not pointing a finger at police. It's pointing a finger at myself, at all of us who have created this system of disconnected armament of our streets. And so I, to your question, I celebrate people who are angry, people who are protesting, people who are trying to finally be heard. And I hope I can do something. Maybe there's a way I can use my own white privilege to somehow lift this up. I also want to note that some of the rioting that we heard about was not caused by people who were truly upset about what's going on. There were people who were manipulating the headlines and coming in to loot and hurt our people in our city. They had nothing to do with lifting up.
Wait. I have a follow-up question for you, because I think you use a lot of terms and I would like for you to define it. So I appreciate what you're saying. So when you say your privilege, what does privilege entail? So we all understand what white privilege is. Like, I want you to just to say it out loud.
Thank you. So you see my skin here, you can see my pasty white flesh. And in our country, in our city, in our world, the fact that I have pasty white flesh means that I have better access to housing, to lending, to jobs, to avoiding having to go into jail, to avoiding having to be subjected to violence of all kinds, both overt and implicit. It means that I'm not going to be questioned wherever I go about my motives or my upbringing or my anything. I am assumed to be a good guy, like the guy with the white hat. There's all this stuff that comes with that. And, it means that I sort of just get all that without knowing even that I got it. I don't even know what I have. It just comes, and I think that's how life is. And so my privilege is this huge rose-colored screen through which I get to look at the world and think, oh, this must be how it is for everybody. And anybody who isn't experiencing it that way maybe just hasn't looked through the rose-colored window enough.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, the George Floyd moment combined with the Black Lives Matter movement has truly created a moment in our society so that we can have a conversation, one that we should have had many, many, many years ago. Now, I grew up here in Washington, D.C., and I can tell you that our community here is not, we all know about discrimination, and we're seeing, even within our own communities, for example, the Afro community, the Afro-Latino community is beginning to be more vocal. And we're hearing more about their concerns. So what this moment is doing is really, it's starting a conversation that we needed to have a long time ago. And I hope that that anger, we can channel it into positive attitudes, into positive things for our society. And I am very optimistic at what I'm seeing. All the young people that are coming out and are engaging, and people are listening to them. That's exactly where we need to be. And I hope this is just not going to go away. We've seen this before. When we had those mass shootings, we all get fired up and we get concerned and we say, this is not going to happen. This is not going to happen again. And so I'm just hoping that this moment is one that we can capture and whose essence is going to be everlasting for a very, very long time. And the ultimate outcome will be changes that we can all say it was worth it. Thank you.
So I want to actually thank you for two things. One, painting a very clear picture and giving a very clear definition of what systemic racism is, not just from your lens, but textbook of what systemic racism is. You said something else about, and I would have to ask for clarification in regards to militarization. I hear it all the time. I see it on CNN and from our major news outlets. I read it in the articles, and I'm still not clear what that means. I know that the mayor's budget was actually cut, and it was cut to the standpoint where the first 6 months of the fiscal year 2021 MPD, we will not be able to hire any officers. And through the natural rates of attrition, the police department will dwindle. As a public safety representative, that is concerning to feel like we may not have enough police to take care of whatever crime shows up in the city. And I think the other thing that you pointed out, which was very poignant, I thank you for that also, is that we need to look within. We need to stop pointing fingers, stop empty rhetoric, because that's what a lot of it is, it's empty rhetoric. Stop foolish behavior. And actually, in the spirit of John, I'll tell a story, but it's not a fictional story, it's a real story. It's actually a piece of my story. So I was working, it's probably my second or third year on the police department. And I had gotten off work, it's probably about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm en route home. I was living in Prince George's County at the time. So I left work, had been at work all day,
and I was sleepy, so I was on the phone, and I was talking to someone to keep myself awake on the ride home. And I get to Prince George's County, and it's dark outside, and there's really no traffic, and I get to a traffic light, and there are woods to the right of me. There's a red light in front of me, and there's a car that's pulling up behind me. And there's a 7-Eleven on the corner, and I was wondering, should I stop at 7-Eleven and get a snack before I go in? And I was driving the last American muscle car that was ever built. It was a Chevy Impala. And as I sat there at the light trying to stay awake on the phone, my passenger door opened. And it was a guy with a gun pointed in the car, said, "Get out." Okay, so I'm a DC guy, so I'm dressed in jeans, Nike boots, and a white t-shirt. I don't wear a police uniform, when I'm going home or when I'm off, so I look just like everyone else who doesn't know I'm a police officer. So I sit there for a minute and contemplate, okay, how am I gonna deal with this? And then my door, the driver's door, opens, and it's another gentleman points a gun into the car. You heard what my man said, "Get out." So I'm gonna stop the story at this point, and I tried to paint as vivid a picture of that set of circumstances as I can. And I want you, everyone in the circle, by show of hands, to, when you had the picture in your mind, who pictured two white guys in my car? Who pictured two Latinos or Asians at my car? So the point that I'm making is bias is implicit. It is ingratiated in everything that we have ever done up to this point in our lives right now. It is contributed to by the friends that we have, the music that we've listened to, the places that we've been, the cultures that we've been exposed to. It all formulates our own individual worldviews. And again, I thank you to the point that we really need to look at ourselves first before we begin the arguments for other folks.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
I already know what the question's going to be. Go ahead.
What is going on right now? Like right now, we're at this tipping point where, so your analogy, I think, is a beautiful analogy. It is the fear that exists within people about how we govern these acts that happen in our communities. But right now, there's this image of this police officer with his neck, with his knee on a man's neck that we're celebrating. And so I'm saying, how do we address that feeling that is ingrained in our societies when you're a person who doesn't have white privilege? How do we address that in our communities right now? Because that's what we're talking about.
Well, I think everyone, myself included, have a right to be outraged by the things that we saw in Minneapolis. It's been denounced by, I think, every ethnic background that we could think of has been denounced by every police department that I've seen on television. And I think the individual response is up to the individual. To your point, I hate to live in a community where the stores and the business owners who have developed relationships and I understand their hardships, and combined with the pandemic that we're currently going through, the reality of the fact that they may not be able to open their businesses back up after having them destroyed is a big concern for me, not just as a law enforcement official, but as a person in general. And then you have to ask that question, what did this person, as the business owner, do to qualify for such destruction? What did this person do? What did this person's business and the way this person handled their business have to do with something that happened in Minneapolis? And so that's how I answer that question.
Anyone else that want to actually say anything else? Who's wondering? Okay. So I mean, there's a lot going on. I definitely don't want to leave the discussion, but I just want people to dig a little deeper, because I think some of these things are, when people use the terms white privilege and things like that. Oh, okay, there we go. The microphone wasn't even on. When they use the term white privilege and things like that, we don't really try to define what they are. So, like, when people say systemic racism, it is, our individual stories definitely help us understand what's going on, and they influence who we are. But there's a culture in America, like, so for example, yesterday, I'm an artist. I was on a call with folks who consider themselves white allies, you know what I mean? Because now everybody's talking about black lives and everything. And so the first thing I say to them is I say, I don't believe you until November. I don't believe you until November. That's the first thing I say. But there's more to it than that, and the reason I said it is because white privilege allows you to switch up whenever you want. Next month it could be protest about the Dolphins or a gluten-free diet or whatever else. That's what white privilege allows. It allows you, but I'm black every day. I've been black my whole life, you know what I mean? So this is not a temporary thing for me. I can't switch up. So that's one. And then I say, and even in November, so I'm just saying that the support has to be sustainable. That's really what I'm saying. But I try to be poetic and say, I don't believe you till November. And then the other part I say to them is I say, and then my option is to get rid of one white man and replace them with another, in hopes that this white man is kind to us. And so what I'm saying is there's an idea, and this is not, you know what I'm saying? I'm really not trying to get people to be defensive in any way. There's an issue with how the idea of whiteness, those people who believe themselves to be white, and those people who believe themselves to be black, the relationship, the contract that we have with one another. And it's in every institution. Right now, the focus is on the police department, but then it could be in the education system, and then it could be on, anything else, you know what I'm saying? Like, right, it makes it seem like the coronavirus is racist. You know what I mean? You're like, hold up, the coronavirus is the people. You know what I mean? Like, it's, and then it becomes this psychological thing where you're like, damn, black people got the coronavirus the worst. We struggle in the education system. We locked up, and it becomes you have to fight every day for your own humanity. So and I'm just saying, I'm just asking people to really just like really be honest, because like there is a like, in my opinion, I'm not knocking what everybody is. There is my community is not fans of the police department. And these other incidents just remind you why you're not fans of the police department. And I'm not, and there may be a benefit with having a black man from DC in that position versus somebody who's not, because I've also seen, I'm a native Washingtonian. I've seen when they hire these ex-military guys who come in and they treat me very differently as opposed to an officer that I might know in my community. You know what I'm saying? So I'm trying to give it balance. But the moments where I do not feel like a human being have often been at the hands of a dude who opens the door and tells you to get out the car. And then the other one was a police officer because they have a gun and they can take my life. So I don't like the thugs, if you want to call those people, which is not the majority of my community, but we have some people who are criminals and do things because they're poor and they probably haven't been treated in the right way and maybe not even been checked by their own community. And oftentimes it's been by police officers, both white and black. And that's been my experience. I don't need to tell the whole details, but there isn't a sense of community with the police officer. And that's why you hear terms like militarization, because it's upping the ante on their relationship so people can really understand what it is. Is anybody still okay?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So I kept laughing because I appreciate your honesty. I don't know what's going on in the room, but there's a lot going on in the world, you know what I mean? But to answer a question you had directly about, what is the militarization of the police department? It would be programs like the 1033 program, right? That's instituted at local law enforcement. It would be programs like what certain forces do with Israel, where it's like the deadly exchange program. So you learn different tactics from different police officers who also happen to be oppressing Palestinian people. It would be the international mechanisms like AFRICOM, right? It's like, why does U.S. have an Africa command? Do you know, like what is that thinking? What is the mentality? What's the plan? And I'm happy you brought up just like the elections and government, because I mean, if you look at it, every single president that's been in office, every congressperson, senator, like what changes have we really seen? Do you know what I mean? For people that look like me, let me say that. So sure, wait until November, but it's, what are you switching out for what? It's a larger system, and being hip and educated and aware of what that larger system is to truly get power, because that's what it's about. You know what I mean? It's beyond sexism, racism, capitalism. It's power, and power needs to be with the people, and specifically led by the most impacted. You know what I mean? Like, we need more voices, more story, more everything, more visibility, more humanity for poor working class people. You know what I mean? And again, linking it internationally to what is going on in the global system, that people of African descent and or poor people and or people of different like genders, it's like why is it that we're always at the bottom of the spectrum, regardless of what it is, whether it's the number of us locked in cages, whether it's our social determinants to health, our accessibility of health, affordability of health, our access to healthy, wholesome food, you know, education, everything across the board. Why is that? So we need to start asking larger questions and getting educated, seriously.
Cool.
Yeah, I wanted to respond to the question also about what does it mean, militarization of police. And really, I'm not just talking about militarization of police who wear uniforms. I mean militarization of policing, of the whole idea of how we make safety, how we make community happen. And that's on all of us. And so every time I choose to make a phone call to 911 to address a situation, rather than doing whatever I can to address it on my own and through my community and non-police mechanisms, I am militarizing policing in my community. And we do that in our budget. Again, when we are defunding the roving leaders, the urban park rangers, we are, you know, the people who actually cost a lot less per hour to deploy than police officers. And this is not to say, you know, one is better or worse than the other, but just when you're making budget decisions, we are always, we as a public, as a voting public, are always choosing to put our money into militarization, into more paramilitary equipment, into more vests. None of our people out on the street, in the parks for the past 30 years, they don't wear bulletproof vests. They don't have weaponry. They don't have arrest powers, but they've been safe. In 30 years of this work, in 230 playgrounds and parks and community gardens and alleys all over the city, not one of our volunteers or partners has ever been hurt. Not one. And that's not because, you know, there's some like angel watching over them. It's because they're working with the most powerful force on earth, which is community. And when we choose, as we do in the way that we decide how policing happens, that we're going to farm it out, it has to be professionals, it can't be us. You know, the police tell us all the time, we can't do this by ourselves. And yet our budgeting is designed to do it that way, to contract out policing to people who have weapons but don't actually, in most cases, really understand the neighborhoods where they patrol. There are awesome cops. We've won awards for working with all kinds of police partners, but they're awesome police who really know where they are, but the vast majority don't. The force deployment rotates people around like pieces on a chessboard. Jump out squads come flying in like the scene I described, where they have no idea what they're looking at. And they're about to kill somebody because he talked to an ice cream truck driver. That's what I mean by militarization.
Cool. Get that. Wait. You're not asking a question.
Thank you again. How many of your partners have been called by a 911 dispatcher to go to a domestic violence disturbance where one of the individuals was on? I would guess not many. How many of your partners have been called to situations where we had active shooters in the city and had to go into what we call an active hot zone? I would imagine not many. I think that you make a very great point, valid point in regards to the training and militarization of police, but then that also brings the question when there is a terrorist event, whether it's national or domestic, when there's unrest where weapons are involved, and we have a lot of weapons recovered every single day in the District of Columbia, firearms, and not just handguns. We're talking assault rifles that we recover all the time from people who just are not going to put their hands behind their back and say, okay, you got me. Who will fight? Who will shoot the police? What do you suggest for the police that have to go into those circumstances without any sort of training?
We're going to broaden this discussion a little bit. I want to say a couple things. So, like, I have an answer to that question, and again, I'm not anti us having a discussion about the police department, but there's numerous stories about being black and the relationship I've had with police officers, and one of the suggestions based on what's going on is tie these lawsuits and stuff that typically happen. Usually someone dies at the hands of some police officer. The community elevates it to the point where it actually gets noticed, and then there's some money or something given to their family, and it goes away. George Floyd's family might receive $1 million or $2 million or something like that, and then it's going to go away, and then it's going to happen again, right? That's what happens. That is the rhythm. That is the rhythm of what happens. One of the suggestions is tying that $2 million to the pension funds of the police officers, because these are funds that secure their future because of all the hard work they do to go into these environments and de-escalate things when they get these calls for domestic violence. Some is also saying that if you are found that you have used the use of force, you lose your pension, all of that hard work, so that you can take some pause with these human beings, because right now, the community does not feel like, well, at least the community I'm from, let me speak, does not feel like we are being served properly by these police officers because of systemic racism. It's not just police officers, it's all institutions. And so this is the next question that I want to ask. And again, I'm just speaking about what's current in the world. Is what event happened in your lives, however you identify, as if you identify as being white or black or whatever you identify as, what incident happened in your life where you was like, oh, that's what makes me, like you had an interaction with somebody. Society has a way of confirming who you are. Like you mentioned, being in the car with your t-shirt on and your boots on. At some point in time, they saw you as somebody who was vulnerable with a nice car. You know what I mean? They saw you as a black dude in a car. They didn't see you as a police officer because they made pause with coming to your car with guns. Is that an accurate kind of assumption? Okay, so I'm saying, now I'm trying to get stories from you guys. When did you, or even if you're female, like when was there a comment or something that was made and you're like, oh, this is the way society is treating me right now, whether you agree with it or not. So like, when did you know that you were white? You know what I mean? When was that at? Was it at 5 or whatever? So that's the question.
So redirecting the question to, have we experienced racism? It's not necessarily concentrating on police. We're talking about.
Yeah, I think I explained it right. I got you. So I'm just putting it out there. So when did you tell me the story of when you realized that you were that person or society treated you in that manner?
There's so many different ways in which you can see this happening, and I think about when you talk about white privilege. For me, for example, and I am so glad and so thankful to God that I wasn't born prior to the 60s, when people had all kinds of challenges, because I just don't know how people were able to survive. I go back and I watch television and I see some of the things that were happening. For example, I was watching on Facebook this whole situation of black ownership that took place back in the 20s and how they were rioted and they were displaced, and you just because they were black, you just like, my God. I mean, sometimes you truly cannot put yourself in the shoes of somebody. And I, for example, when I started college at George Washington, you talk about white privilege, and for me, it's like if I missed a day of class, it was a big deal for me. And I felt that the white kids that were attending school, it wasn't a big deal for them because going to a predominantly white school, you know, they had all these buddies that they could get homework from. And I was never able to get into that environment where the white people were, and I couldn't become buddies with them. And so even something as simple as that, you know, not being able to have that network, because I didn't go to school where we had a bunch of black people and a bunch of Latinos, I couldn't get away with the things that they were getting away with. So something as simple as that. But it also goes even further. I worked at a defense contractor, and I've been with them for 20 years. And you walk into our corporate headquarters, our corporate boardrooms, and 99% of the people are white, you know? And you wonder, you know, and yes, I'm happy where I am. I am very thankful that I have that job and I get paid well. But I know and I realize that I have been passed over and over and over, and perhaps I don't make a big issue of it because I don't see it that way. Another person, my sister is really good at this. My sister and I came to the US back in the 80s, and she has twins. And the twins came, one was light skinned, the other one was dark. And even at church, when they needed to have a child to represent the baby Jesus, they would always choose the twin girl who happened to be very light skinned. And she was very upset about that, and she sometimes would not allow them. She said, no, but she's a girl. Jesus was a boy. Yeah, but they wanted to get that image of whiteness to reflect Jesus. And so, you know, and it's so, I tell you, it's very difficult being a cop now, I would imagine, you know, because these are the people that are supposed to protect us, right? And then, you know, in some ways we started our president pitting blue versus black and brown. And from there it just escalated. And then now what you're seeing is you're hearing people talk about defunding police, which I have no idea what they're saying when they say that. You have a whole community that talks about dismantling police forces. And you see at the same time police officers going hand in hand with protesters and marchers, which to me is so awkward, so difficult to see. I mean, I appreciate what they're doing, but to me it's just very awkward. It's just very difficult to do. And so I can imagine how challenging it is at this moment to be, and then look, I don't want to defend anybody, but even these people who are caught doing horrible things, you know, the police officers I'm talking about, I'm sure at the end of the day when they do these horrific things, they say, my God, I set out in life I chose this field because it was my passion, it was something that I wanted to do to help, and look what I did. I ended up making it worse. So I'm sure that they too realize that this isn't right. I just know that there is a conservative woman that has a video all over. I think his last name is Owens.
When you say conservative, what do you mean?
A person that is on the alt-right. Somebody that, thinks that affirmative action should not exist, that black people have what they have because of their conditions and their situations. In other words, their intellect and what they bring and not necessarily their surrounding. People who, this particular woman truly goes on social media and talks about what a horrific person George Floyd was, and that we should not be elevating this man and glorifying him, and that the black community can do a lot better than that, and that the black community is the only community that defines the lowest common denominator to elevate them and make them, a god. And I understand that there is a deep discussion that needs to be had. For example, I tell you, I own a bunch of properties, and I'm renting an apartment right now. And I've made a decision that I won't rent to somebody that has a score below 600 points. Well, I am noticing that what I'm doing basically is I'm saying black people are not going to be able to get my property because out of 10 persons that calls, nearly every one of them who is below 600 points happens to be an African American person. And so I need to make a decision. How do I contribute to making our society better? What do I need to do? Let's go ahead and go deep into the root cause of this. I have been inspired. When I came to the United States, my mother was a housekeeper, and I used to go and clean houses with her after school. And I would go into homes of Jewish kids, and I would see them playing piano after school, very exciting, very nice. And what I said to myself is I need to find the passion, the motivation to not continue to be a cleaner. I need to do a lot better. And so I said to myself, the only way I can change it is if I go to school, get the best education I can do. And I know that that'll change. We need to do the same. We need to go to the black community, to the brown community, and find these kids and start early and let them know that there is a lot of good for them out there, that they can do a lot. So I hope that this conversation and the conversations that people are having in other communities touches on that, and that we can actually go to our communities. When we talk about defunding the police, what are you defunding to put it where? But we have DC public schools is funded more than any. We spend about $30,000 per student, and we're not producing the best. So let's have a deep conversation about all these different issues in our community, because I think it starts there. Having our people from when they're young, having them rise up and let them know that they can be whatever they want to be, and they can do that.
Cool, that's the story. So you guys got the idea, like you talked about like being in college and realizing that the social network that he had wasn't the same because you were the only one there. So you didn't have a buddy to be like, hey, what did you know? I'm tired today. Did you take notes so I can get those notes? And how that has you have to maneuver and be resilient to still make it through those institutions without those same type of supports. Any other stories? When did you realize that you were a woman, or if you identify as a woman, or if you were or a male? Like when were those stories? Can you just give a little snippet of when that was?
Okay, so actually, I came from a very white suburban region of Long Island, and most of my life was spent there, and then I moved here to DC. So I had some black friends. You know, my father always told me, don't be prejudiced, and so I grew up with that. You know, you always accept people for who they are, not their skin color. So I had that background, but when I got here, I catch myself saying I was kind of like a little bit of a snowflake because I've always been around white people. But I also call myself, and this is my racism within that came out, I'm embarrassed to say it, you know, but we stereotype people and what they should have and their socioeconomic levels and everything. Going back to good cars and everything, I had seen a car, which was an Aston Martin McLaren, and it's quite expensive vehicle, $200,000 plus. And I'm like, oh, what a nice car, you know. And I'm pull up alongside of this car, and I'm assuming, okay, this is a white person that owns this vehicle, right? But it was an young African-American gentleman. And I caught myself, and I'm like, wow, you know, that was really racist of you to assume that. So, I hate to say it, but, you know, I myself have to look at myself because it's racism with all of us, and that was my racist moment that I had.
Thank you.
When I was little, we had a woman who came to clean our house, and I was friends with her son. I was 6 years old. His name was Sylvester, and we were in the same class in first grade at our elementary school outside of New York City. And I got in trouble one day because I was trying to explain to our classmate Nadine Spazzi that there were two kinds of dam. And she raised her hand and said, lunch lady, Stevie Coleman said a swear word, and I got punished. And my punishment was I had to stand up against the wall in the cafeteria for a few minutes. Well, Sylvester said the same word in the class where we were, and his punishment was the teacher took out a jumbo-sized bar of Dial soap in front of the whole class and rammed it into Sylvester's mouth and rotated the bar of soap so that he had to humiliate himself by biting down into that soap so that it hurt him and he cried. That was when I realized that I was white.
thank you for that honesty.
Oh, can I say something else about that? Sure. I didn't do anything about that. And it bothers me to this day. I was 6 years old, but I knew the principal. I was friends with him. And I didn't say anything about this teacher who was a bigot, a violent bigot. I just thought, I guess that's how things work. And I carry that with me to this day.
So I was born in another country, right? And when I came to this country, I was in a neighbor where there was a lot of black people. I didn't really know nothing about it. But then people were coming up to me saying, "They're mean. They're going to do something bad to you if you don't defend yourself." And I was like, I have to let myself know people first and then judge them. But then there was this girl, two girls, they were twins, and they came up to me talking in English, and I didn't understand what they were saying. And I went up to my sister, and I was like, "Can you help me?" She was like, "In what?" And I was like, "I don't know what they're saying." And then the girls was like, "Can we be friends?" And then I went up to my mom, and I told my mom, "Look, there's two girls outside who want to be friends with me." And I was like, "Go ahead." And I was like, "No, people, they say that they're mean." And then my mom was like, "But you said one day that you wouldn't let people, you were going to know people first and then judge them." I was like, "Yeah." And then during the years I was there, I saw a lot of racism to them and to Hispanic people. I saw a lot of that too.
When you say you saw it, what does it mean you saw it? What does that mean?
Because every time I was walking the streets, there were like people, and they were saying, "Oh, he's black and he's mean." All the time I was always hearing that from no matter who was it, but they always used to say, "They're gonna go kill someone right now." And there would used to be a lot of young people there, and because they used to see them hanging out on the streets, they were mean for them. So one day I went up to a group of men around there. They started talking bad of them, and I said, "Don't judge a book by their cover." And they got surprised, and they were like, "You're just a kid of 11 years old. How do you understand this?" I was like, "I know what I'm doing, and I know what I'm saying." By then, I haven't seen that much racism in the street I live now. I see more the community get together.
At the time, I guess I knew that I was like African American. It's like one day I think I was going to the store, and I needed to catch the bus. And as I was waiting, this white old lady came next to me, and I didn't do nothing. I was just like waiting for the bus, and she was like, "You're not gonna get far in life." Like, she just said that, and I don't really know why, but I got mad, and I started like, I know, but I started like cursing at her and stuff, and I got like super mad. And when I told my mom and sister what happened, they was like, "Calvin, you should have called me and stuff." And I guess from that experience, I learned that, I guess the way I looked or the color of my skin can do something, because like I can't really explain it, but it's just like, because it was so sudden, and you wouldn't really like think that you were just waiting on the bus and then some random white lady would just come up to you and say that. And another thing about racism is most of it I see is on social media and like online, because TikTok, yeah. So I see a lot of videos of like under the comments where it's like kind of like racist slurs or just race, like people doing stuff and then people getting called out for it. or just because like it's a screen and like people could say whatever they want and they think there's no consequences because you're not in person. You could just say whatever you want. So yeah, that's basically it.
Thank you. You have a story that you want to share?
When I was very young, maybe like, I don't even know, 10 or 11, one of my brothers showed me the Jet magazine cover with Emmett Till on it. And I was like, oh, that's me. This is what they do to kids. So like, you learn about race early if you are a person of color, you know what I mean? So I already had true stories from my family growing up in the South about who and what domestic terrorism really is, you know, and what it means for violence to come from the state-sanctioned violence versus just, like intercommunal violence also very, very bad, but we also need to look at larger systems of violence against us. So yeah, that Emmett Till Jet magazine cover was very clear in addition to all the stories and what I witnessed as well. So that's it, keep it short.
So now, by no means are there other answers. There are many answers to all of the stories that we shared. And it's important to know what our stories are, like part of this storytelling exercise where we all share our stories. So I appreciate all the input from everyone here, and especially young people where they talk about social media. You can hear how it evolves into all of the fabrics of how we consume things. But we are about to close out now. It's important that we just remember that people are carrying these stories with them. So find out their stories. It helps you to see them in a human way, whatever institution you may work for. But we're going to close out with a circle story too. So now we got to hear a little bit. Again, it's a creative story. It can be made up. And you mind if I close out with it this time? You can end it, but I'm going to go around. We're going to go the opposite way around. So I'll start out. Okay. Once upon a time, there was a young man who was 12 years old, and he knew he was 12 because he got his first chest hair. And he was like, oh my gosh, I'm a man. Look at that. And he picked it out, and he screamed, he's like, ah! This here is evidence that I am a man. I'm going to go into my community, and I'm going to show everybody my first chest hair.
Then his trans friend came over and asked, what societal weird gender role, what does a chest hair mean? Why are you pulling that out of your chest if it's your first one because you're only 12? Why are you showing it to the world? But more importantly, what is it with your thing and gender?
But what he countered was that to him, it was what it symbolized. It meant that it was time for him to start thinking about taking control of his life, knowing that now there is a pivotal moment for him, that this is a call for him to now behave different, that he is now somebody that can be counted. And so he was looking forward to being that individual that would impact the world.
And then as he began to contemplate how he was going to impact the world, he figured he should go to an expert, someone who knew his true value. So he decided to go to the church, see what the Bible said about his true value. So he went to the church, met with the pastor, and
so when he went to the church, he decided to go talk to the priest and just get some advice on how to really become a man. And once the priest gave him all the advice, the boy, his self-confidence about like him growing up grew, and so then he decided to go to his neighborhood, but then
as he was walking down the street, Josephine Butler was sitting on the stoop, and she called out to him. And she said, "What's going on, child?" And he said, "I'm a man. I think I can do good as a man." And she said, "Well, you're human, and we can all do good as humans. As long as we keep our eyes open, and our ears open, and our hearts open, we can all do good."
So he thanked her for that advice, and he said, "Okay, I'm going to follow this advice. I'm going to take it to heart." And there's different definitions of being a man. It's not about just having a chest hair. It's much deeper than just a chest hair.
And then he went to his house and he talked to his mom, and he was like, "I want to throw a party." And his mom was so confused. And he was like, "Why do you want to throw a party?" "I don't know. I feel like I need to throw a party because I feel a man." And then his mom said, "How do you know you're a man?" And then he was like, "Because I have my first hair." And then she decided to do the party. And suddenly he saw a pinata with style with hair. He was like, "What is this?" The mom was like, "It's a pinata for you to celebrate." He was like, "I'm a man, I'm not a boy anymore." So he got mad, and then his mom said, "You're still a kid. I know you're gonna be a man in the future, but we need you to enjoy your life." And then he decided to go outside and play with his friends, and he's like, "I'm still a boy."
Go ahead. So real quick, I'm going to take a moment and say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank you. Like, we had a real conversation. We were vulnerable in many ways. We shared thoughts that may be popular, unpopular. So I really appreciate it. Amongst all that's going on, please go out here in the world and be great humans. All right. Thank you.